I do want to hit one more topic today. And actually, I could spend days on this topic, but I wanted to. Yesterday during the show, I was mentioning during the show that Attorney General Barr was in Congress, and he was up there testifying at the request of the House Judiciary Committee Chairman, Jerry Nadler. And it was a raucous day, I have more clips than I have time, but I want to just tell you some takeaways. I really urge you to think about how crazy the day got up there yesterday. Now, first, there's one overall reaction before I play these clips for you. When you think about the nobility of the idea that our founders tried to create, a country rooted in liberty where you had three branches of government, and the idea that you had the legislative branch spelled out in the Constitution, you had the House of Representatives, which is basically people from every state, a certain number of people in each state gets a representative, and so states with bigger population have more representatives. But these people were essentially, the entire structure of Congress was created by our founders with the idea that these people would go up and respect the nobility of America. They would respect the idea of the rule of law. They would engage in certainly robust debate over political ideas and legislation and policy issues. And that was supposed to be something noble and respectable. What you saw, I am not exaggerating to call it a brawl. It was a temper tantrum on the part of the Democrats who control the Judiciary Committee, who control Congress, a childish temper tantrum brawl in which the only adult in the room, or the main adult in the room, was Attorney General Barr. The Republicans on the House Judiciary Committee managed to get a few good shots in, good points in, but I cannot tell you, just an overarching reaction, what a sham, what a disgrace, a true disgrace the Democrats in the House Judiciary Committee hearing were as a supposedly question Attorney General Barr. They weren't questioning him at all. The entire purpose of that stunt they called a hearing was to give themselves an opportunity to stare into the camera and ask obnoxious questions and get some great clips they can use in their re-election campaigns. It was a soundbite, snarky, condescending, not letting him answer, not letting him speak. This was the whole point of doing this. It was not to investigate. It was not to understand Attorney General Barr's thinking or reasoning. It was nothing like an adult conversation. It was a childish temper tantrum all day long on the part of the Democrats. Fortunately for Attorney General Barr, some good Republicans got to say a few words. Having said that, I want to just start with Jerry Nadler. This is clip 2, Matt the Very Wonderful. Clip 2 is the beginning of the hearing. This is Nadler talking about as he's kicking off the hearing. Jerry Nadler of New York, Chairman of the House Judiciary Committee.
We are coming to grips with a civil rights struggle long swept under the rug, if not outright ignored by our government. We are, as a nation, witnessing the federal government turn violently on its own people. In your time at the department, you have aided and abetted the worst failings of the president. Let us recount just some of the decisions that have left us deeply concerned about the Department of Justice. First, under your leadership, the department has endangered Americans and violated their constitutional rights by flooding federal law enforcement into the streets of American cities against the wishes of the state and local leaders of those cities to forcefully and unconstitutionally suppress dissent. Second, at your direction, department officials have downplayed the effects of systemic racism and abandoned the victims of police brutality, refused to hold abusive police departments accountable for their actions, and expressed open hostility to the Black Lives Matter movement. Third, in coordination with the White House, the department has spread disinformation about voter fraud, failed to enforce voting rights laws, and attempted to change the census rules to flaunt the plain text of the Constitution, and even defied court orders on this subject, all in the apparent attempt.
I got to interrupt him. I can't even stand it anymore. I am going to get through many more points. I can't even stand listening to Nadler anymore. One thing he has said is true. everything he says is a lie, except one thing he said is true. It is that the Department of Justice and people on behalf of President Trump have spoken up about the real roots of the Black Lives Matter movement. Yes, they have. They have said it is an anarchist movement. It is a Marxist movement. It's a Destroy America movement. And so, yes, they have done that. They weren't lies. They were true, what Barr had said. But Nadler went through a litany of things. And I just want you to think about what he said to start with. Nadler was talking about you flooded law enforcement into cities to suppress dissent. The Portland riots went on, the destruction of property, this is not peaceful protesters in the street. As one example, the Portland riots went on for something like 53 days before finally the president sent in troops to protect federal property, to protect the courthouse in Portland, because the protesters, the anarchist riot mobsters, the thugs, were attempting to light it on fire. And so this actually happens in Portland, and yet what you have Nadler calling the White House, the president, sending in troops to protect property. You have Nadler calling that the president flooding law enforcement into cities, suppressing legitimate dissent. I mean, what I want to get at, this stuff could make you crazy, but what I want to get at is Nadler knows what happened in Portland. He knows 53 days, not peaceful protests, not sit-ins, not people waving signs and saying we demand XYZ. We're talking about burning buildings, burning cars, shooting people, people getting killed, smashing windows, destroying property, and he's calling that dissent and expressing shock and outrage that somebody finally said, you know what, actually, now that you're destroying federal property, I don't think so anymore. The level of crazy inherent in what Nadler was doing and saying was simply, I mean, if the Democrats think they helped themselves at all in this hearing yesterday, they are truly insane. The only Americans who could possibly walk away from that hearing yesterday in which Attorney General Barr was berated and harassed, the only Americans who walk away with a good impression of the Democrat Party are the radical anarchist, anti-Marxist, anti-American leaders of the movements that are trying to destroy America. Everyone else watching is thinking, what has happened? What has happened to the Democrat Party? But I want to move forward. So, he goes on and on and on, and Nadler goes on and on. I want to just play a short clip. Jim Jordan, who is a Republican congressman from Ohio, one of the true heroes of the U.S. House. Here's Jim Jordan, what he had to say. This is clip 3.
I now recognize the ranking member of the Judiciary Committee, the gentleman from Ohio, Mr. Jordan, for his opening statement.
Spying. That one word. That's why they're after you, Mr. Attorney General. 15 months ago, April 10th, 2019, in a Senate hearing, you said this sentence, quote, I think spying on a political campaign is a big deal. Spying on a political campaign is a big deal. It sure is. And since that day, when you had the courage to state the truth, they attack you. They've been attacking you ever since, every day, every week, for simply stating the truth that the Obama-Biden administration spied on the Trump campaign. 1 year ago, New York Times headline said this. 1 year ago, quote, FBI sent investigator posing as assistant to meet with Trump aide in 2016. The FBI sent a young lady who used the name Azra Turk to meet Papadopoulos in September of 2016. They sent someone pretending to be someone else to meet a person associated with the Trump campaign. You know what they call that? Spying. 1 month later, October 2016, they used the dossier to spy on Carter Page. The salacious, unverified dossier, Jim Comey's words, not mine. They took it to the FISA court, didn't tell the courts that the Clintons paid for it, didn't tell the court that the guy who wrote the document, Christopher Steele, had already communicated to the Justice Department that he was, quote, desperate to stop Trump from getting elected. And guess what? There were 15 more lies that they told the court.
Okay, this was one of the best moments, and this is the very beginning, that Nadler has his rambling, ongoing, just verbal assault on the Attorney General. And I mean, I didn't even play the most nasty, mean-spirited things that Nadler said, but then you had, fortunately, Jim Jordan, Congressman from Ohio, pointing out to Barr, and frankly, to America, the only reason Barr is sitting there being harassed by the Democrats is because Barr is going to expose what the Democrats did, what happened inside the FBI and the DOJ, the entire effort to destroy candidate Trump, and then President Trump and Attorney General Barr, along with the U.S. Attorney Durham, are going to expose this, and this is what's making Nadler crazy. But I want to go on and tell you what happened yesterday, too, because it really, really matters in this hearing. So the big takeaways to me were, number one, you watched the left behave as the tyrannical bullies they are. You watch the Democrats on that committee. This is not this refined process where lawmakers are trying to get the truth of things. This was just a stunt hearing designed to give all the Democrats something they could use in their campaign advertisements in the fall. One other one, I hadn't heard of this guy before, but there was another one, Matt, the one, this is clip 5. Okay, there was a guy, I hadn't heard him before, he's a congressman. His name is Joe Neguse, and he is from Colorado, and this is clip 5. This is just a quick exchange he had in his questions with Attorney General Barr.
Good afternoon, Mr. Attorney General. I want to go through a couple of your prior statements. On April 18th of 2019, you stated, quote, that the White House fully cooperated with the special counsel's investigation. You're aware of that?
Mm-hmm.
Today, yes or no, Mr. Barr, under the penalty of perjury, do you testify that that statement was true at the time you made it?
I thought it to be true at the time I made it.
Why
isn't it true?
June 9th, I'll get to that, Mr. Barr.
I mean, does it have
Mr.
to
Barr,
do with quibbling
I will get
over...
to that. Reclaiming my time, you answered the question.
Okay.
I have another question for you. On June 19th of
No,
2020...
actually, I need to answer that question.
Mr. Attorney General, you did answer the question.
No, you said under penalty of perjury. I'm going to answer the damn question. Okay?
You said the answer was yes, is what you said.
Well,
are you saying no?
I think what I was referring to, and I'd have to see the context of it, was the supplying of documents.
No, Mr. Attorney General, the statement was not limited to the supply of documents. You stated at a press... Mr. Attorney General, reclaiming my time. Reclaiming my time.
I think that's what I was talking about.
On April 19th of 2019 that the White House fully cooperated with the special counsel's investigation. You knew when you made that statement that the president had not agreed to be interviewed by the special counsel. Now,
okay, I'll tell you, folks, the reason I wanted you to see that is, number one, you can hear that this Congressman Joe Neguse does not want to let the Attorney General answer his question. He doesn't want an answer. He's trying to do the bullying thing, the same tactic that Mueller used throughout Mueller and his entire team during the Mueller investigation into the non-existent Russian hoax and non-existent Russian interference into the Russian hoax. The same tactic, bullying, shutting down someone before they can give an answer to the question. Obviously, Barr is trying to say, I said we had cooperated, and Barr is realizing he's been talking at the time about documents. This guy is trying to, and you can see where he's headed. He's trying to say, well, you said you fully cooperated, but then again, the president refused to testify or permit a deposition to occur. He's trying to warp and twist his words. And fortunately for us, Attorney General Barr is a smart enough guy, is a trained lawyer who's been around the block a few times, is not his first rodeo, to recognize what Neguse is trying to do. Not pursue truth, but to corner him into something he can later call a lie. This is why you saw Barr saying, I'm going to answer the damn question. Thank goodness he did that. One other point I want to make, and so I'll tell you, we'll play one other little clip, and I'll tell you the things I think are important takeaways. But the last clip we have, this relates to something that, at least that appears, no one in the House Judiciary Committee knew, even including Jim Jordan. This is clip 4, and this is another thing that came out of the hearing yesterday.
38 people unmasked Michael Flynn's name 49 times in a 2-month time frame. 7 people at the Treasury Department unmasked Michael Flynn's name. Is this an issue that Mr. Durham is looking into?
I've asked another U.S. attorney to look into the issue of unmasking because of, the high number of unmaskings and some that do not readily appear to have been in the line of normal business.
Wait a minute. So I want to be clear. So there is another investigation on that issue specifically going on at the Justice Department right now?
Yes.
Wow, that's great. So Mr. Durham is looking at how the whole Trump-Russia thing started. You have another U.S. attorney. Can you give us that U.S. attorney's name, or is that something you're comfortable doing? Or?
John Bash of Texas.
John Bash of Texas is looking specifically at the fact.
At unmasking.
38 people, 49 times unmasked Michael Flynn's name, and probably other unmaskings that took place in the final days of the Obama-Biden administration. Is that accurate?
Actually, a much longer period of time.
Even before that?
Yes.
Thank you,
Okay,
Mr.
and we can
I
cut it off there.
appreciate that.
This
That's
is a
it.
great thing. And I'll wrap up because I'm going to be out of time here shortly. Attorney General, I mean, part of the you're grown up in Washington, you're going to accept the job as Attorney General, you may get called to Congress. There was a note at the beginning, Nadler actually pointed out that in all the time that Attorney General Barr was Attorney General previously, which he'd served in that role before, and now he's back again under President Trump, this is the first time he'd ever been called to Congress. He pretty much kept his composure in a long day of blistering ugliness coming out of the Democrats' mouths. But I want to just give you a wrap-up summary of what the great things were that came out of yesterday. Number one, America could see the Democrats are out of their minds trying to characterize the conduct of the rioting anarchists in cities around this country as dissenters who should not have to be subject to control by anyone, including the federal officers being sent in by President Trump. Number two, great thing that came out. One of the questioners was asking Attorney General Barr, will you commit that you won't allow the Durham investigation into the Trump-Russia collusion hoax? Will you commit that you won't release those results of the investigation until after the November elections? To which he said, no, I won't commit to that. I won't commit to that. It's really, really important. You have to understand the Democrats are trying to say that they're taking the high road. They're trying to have legitimate elections and they want real elections this fall, and they can't, and they really don't want to have interference in those elections by having Durham release the findings of his report, which in plain English, what the Democrats are saying, if the American people have any idea how rotten to the core the leadership was of the CIA, FBI, DOJ, complicit Democrats across the board, and frankly some Republicans too, fine whoever it is, fine. What the Democrats are saying is, we can't win this election if the American people understand how truly corrupt we are. That was what they were saying to Barr. We can't win this election if America figures out how corrupt we are. So, Attorney General Barr, will you promise don't tell anybody until after the election how corrupt we are? To which he said, no. We're going to release it when it's ready. And I have to tell you, folks, this theme, there were many, many pundits on the leftist shows going on and on about how outrageous this was. Here you're having the Department of Justice interfere. They're interfering with the elections in the fall. No, what they want, silence in this investigation, that would be interfering in the fall elections. So that was a great outcome of this hearing. We saw how nasty Democrats are. We understand the other thing, the little exchange between Jordan that we just watched a moment ago between Congressman Jordan and Attorney General Barr, realizing there's another investigation ongoing about all this unmasking. This is fabulous news for people who want to get to the whole truth, the full truth about what happened at the FBI and the DOJ. So we got that little tidbit out. No one seemed to be aware of that. It's a U.S. attorney from Texas named Bash. We'll have to see what he has to say. We also had this whole, I want to hit this point, I have to hit it more another day, but Nadler started out his remarks with the notion there's a presumption of systemic racism. And he's saying, therefore, because systemic racism exists, everything else I have to say, everything the Democrats want is legitimate. Everything the protesters do is legitimate. Every bit of violence they commit is legitimate, because after all, there's systemic racism. So number one, in the hearing, Attorney General Barr says, no, I do not believe there is systemic racism in the police departments in America. And this is a point I'm going to hit on again tomorrow on the show, but I want to make this really, really clear today. We have to stop accepting the dishonest premises the left puts out. The entire discussion about Black Lives Matter, anarchy, destruction of property is all premised on this. There's systemic racism in America. Therefore, everything that the protesters, anarchists, Marxists do is justified. Thank God for Attorney General Barr, who said, no, actually, I don't believe in systemic racism. And I want to mention there was a great piece in the Wall Street Journal by a guy named Ward Connerly. I sent his picture to Matt the Wonderful. Here he is. Ward Connerly, a black Democrat, really outspoken, or not Democrat, a black conservative guy who's been around a long, long time. He's a founder and chairman of the American Civil Rights Institute. He is opposed to racial and gender preferences, but he had a column in the Wall Street Journal which is called America Isn't a Racist Country. And he basically is making the point. He said, I can tell you what racism was. When we used to have segregation in public accommodations, that was racism. When we used to have rules that impacted the ability to vote for black Americans, that was racism. He goes through the history of America, coming to today to saying there is no systemic racism. This is a lie. It's a great column because what he's basically saying is the entire narrative of the left, legitimizing everything the left is doing, is a lie. And this was another great thing that came out of the hearing yesterday before the Judiciary Committee with Attorney General Barr.